Hey everybody, we are live with Business Spotlight, and I have my good friend Angela Goodman. And Angela's a bit of a serial entrepreneur, gets into a lot of different businesses, and some of them are quite challenging. So, Angela, give us a little bit of a backstory on, how you became an entrepreneur and where that journey took you.
All right. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. So I had many years in the corporate universe, actually about 15, and I was in commercial HVAC and kind of had a really good career there, managing people and doing sales, and I really just got tired of being someone who earned money for everyone else and not as much for myself.
Yep.
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 Yep. So in 2016, I kind of decided, you know what, it's time for me to go out on my own. I had businesses in over the years, different construction businesses that I had partnered with other people in, and so it was like, okay, I'm going to go out on my own. What am I going to do? And I didn't have a plan, and then I'm like, well, maybe I'll buy into a franchise and knew nothing about restaurants at the time, but ended up getting a franchise of Famous Toastery, which is a breakfast and brunch place.
Okay.
And yeah, so decided in 2016 to kind of shelve it all and go out on my own.
Nice.
Hmm.
And tell us about the support because obviously I've financed franchises,
Hmm.
been involved in some. And it's either I think it's either feast or famine. There are some franchises that really have it together. There are other franchises that you might as well light your money on fire.
Yes, I
So
totally agree with that. It's funny. Famous Toastery was a very infant franchise when I ended up with them. So they
mhm.
had at the time three franchisees prior to me. Their longest open franchise location was only about 8 months.
Oh wow.
Um, they had a great concept and they had a great menu and they had very little systems in place at that time. So they were like, they had four locations of their own that had been open only about 6 years total. And so when I decided on board with them, part of it for me was like, well, I can kind of still be my own business owner because they're not 100% in their systems.
Mhm.
And so that was good and bad, in all honesty. So it speaks to what you said about some franchises are light your money on fire and some are really good to get into. Um, Famous Toastery was probably more on the light your money on fire aspect if you didn't know what you were getting yourself into and if you didn't
Yep.
have like a hard nosed desire to win.
Yep.
Um, so I did a lot of work in the beginning that they should have already had outlined for me that they did.
Okay.
Yeah.
That this is a great learning experience for a lot of people as they evaluate certain decisions. If you were to start now that you have this experience and you know what to look for, what are some of the things that you would have looked for and asked up front that you probably didn't know when you were getting yourself into it at
Yeah. So I'll say this. Marketing was probably one of the main things. So most franchises take a royalty fee, and then they also take a marketing fee. And their marketing fee can be utilized for anything that they dictate, right?
the time?
So in a franchise agreement, you really need to dig into and understand what they're using those monies for, what benefits you're going to get out of it, what their growth vehicle and growth plans are, and then also having an understanding of how much support as a franchisee you're going to get from them. So for me, I didn't ask any of those questions.
Mhm.
I didn't have a franchise background. I didn't even have really a restaurant background. I mean, I'd been a restaurant employee for my early years. But I didn't know what questions to ask then. And now it's like, okay, I talk to people all the time who are franchising their own businesses, and I sit and talk to them about the franchisee perspective. And I'm like, well, don't do this and don't do that. And make sure you do this and don't
Yep.
forget that. um, there's a lot of questions, especially around how they're going to support you from a marketing perspective when you first get open, if you're going into a geographical area where their brand is not recognizable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Learn that the hard way.
Yes.
I would say the other thing is a lot of franchises. There's certain kickbacks. There's certain lack of support,
Mm-hmm.
or they have preferred vendors that really shouldn't be preferred vendors, right?
Yep.
So I've seen it all.
Yeah.
I've seen it all. It is scary, you know.
Yeah.
Some don't even come with CRMs.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So some of them don't provide any tools to you, and most of them don't provide any financial tools to you either. So understanding your bookkeeping, how are you going to keep the books? How are you
Yep.
going to move data from your point of sale system, if that's what you're using, over to whatever bookkeeping software you plan to use? I mean, most of them don't have those systems set up for you. So if you're comfortable in setting up those systems on your own, at least you know going in the gate what you're
Yes.
paying for in your franchise fee.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then some, some are just not investable. You have to. You never want to buy a job. Well, unfortunately, a lot of us as entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you see this on the consulting side.
Yeah.
What would you say the percentages of people that have bought a really good job versus people that actually operate a business?
Yeah. I mean, I would say probably 60% of the people who get into a franchise opportunity buy themselves into a job.
Yeah.
They don't have the skill set to understand how to develop and lead talent in their business. They don't have the tools and the framework, and those are not provided. Soft skills and understanding how to develop teams is not something that your franchise is going to provide to you. Which means that if you can't figure out how to do that, you just bought yourself a job as a chief cook and bottle washer of whatever business it is that you decided to purchase.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. What else have you learned from opening two successful restaurants? Because that is not an easy uh, business model at all.
No, well, it's funny, but my trials and tribulations and learnings in the restaurant industry are actually what led me into the cash flow management consulting business that I also have. So prior to COVID hitting, as a restaurant owner, I didn't have any reserves. I mean, there was nothing there. There's just not enough when you're making 6 to 8% profit on a restaurant business of $1.1 million. There's actually not enough money in that to be able to put money away into a savings account. Your cash flow is constantly walking through your front door every day, and you can't guarantee that someone is going to walk through your door from one day to the next. And so going into COVID, I didn't have any cash reserves. Our restaurant had been open little over 3 years at that point in time. And I had no savings. I was operating, payroll to payroll and truck delivery to truck delivery. And then COVID hit and I said, oh my God. And now I've got a staff of 30 some people and I don't have a way to pay them if I don't have people coming through the front door. 15 of those were full-time employees and they relied on me to put food on the table for their families, which is something that I take very personally, as do most entrepreneurs. And so I learned really quickly that I totally screwed up in that first 3 years by having no cash reserves. And fortunately, I got lucky, and I found I had been introduced to Andy Frisella's podcast, The Real AF. I heard about 75 Hard, which then led me to start reading again because I had been, 3 years immersed and entrenched in this restaurant business 7 days a week. And one of the first books I read was Profit First. And that was like the light bulb went off. And I'm like, oh my God, where was this 3 years ago? If I would have had this 3 years ago, I would have cash reserves today as we walk through the door of COVID. And so I implemented it in my business like right away.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was my number one big learning from owning a restaurant. You don't make money, and if you do make money, you don't save money because it's always flowing back out the door.
Yep.
Yeah, and so then you've got to come up with ways to make sure that you retain some of those earnings so that you've got them when the oh shit moment happens.
Because it will happen.
Because it will happen.
It's not a matter of if. It's typically when.
Yeah.
And I would say most businesses do not have more than a month of operating expenses on hand.
That's right.
However, I do differ substantially on Profit First.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. The reason I do, because I always want to give a reason on why I differ.
Yeah.
Is when you go and get equipment financing or a line of credit, one of the things that they check is average daily balances.
Mm-hmm.
They want to make sure you have money in there to pay it, and typically that's in the savings. The problem is if it's in the savings, it's not in the income account. And so Profit First is a great system in theory, and it can work if people leave about 10% of their average monthly volumes in that income account. If not, when someone goes to apply for certain types of financing, whether it's a line of credit or equipment financing, it is much harder to get through to the finish line. And I have this because I work with a lot of accountants that love that system, and I understand why everyone loves it.
Yeah.
But they don't see the back end of that. Now, an SBA loan, that's fine because they're going off tax returns, not really going off cash flow. But there are certain programs and instruments that only go off of cash flows and credit. And most times that is not there.
Well, and it's funny because they go off cash flow in checking accounts, not in savings accounts.
Yes.
So if they were allowed to consider full amount of cash on hand, it would be a different story.
They will do that. They will consider that. But it's adding a couple steps and then explaining to them that the account is their income account is basically zeroed out because most banks are actually looking at that income account or that checking and savings account combined. And so that's a big hiccup I have seen with that, firsthand experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I have, for instance, I've got 9 bank accounts. So I have 2 tax, 2 profit accounts, an income account, an operating expense account, a payroll account, an owner's compensation account. And I build funds in several of those accounts. And so if someone is looking holistically at my P&L and my balance sheet, then they're okay.
Yes.
But now, to your point, the industry has gotten so reliant on technology. Like, for instance, if you go to American Express and you try to get a line of credit with American Express, if it's a savings account, it doesn't exist.
Correct. You know why?
No, tell me.
They only want the account that the deposits are coming into, the money's coming into, because for them it's safer.
Yeah.
And this isn't just like fintech because American Express is a hybrid, right? It's finance and technology combined, and it's made to be quick and easy. There's a lot of companies that are like that I work with, but I'm even saying the banks. So for equipment financing in certain financial institutions, they want to see where the money's coming in. And if that's zeroed out and they say, let's say the payment, you need all new kitchen equipment and it's going to be a $3,000 a month monthly payment. One of the things they check is, do you have that in there on average to cover that payment? And because most times in the Profit First system, it's transferred out, it's not there. And so then you have to basically create the story to get it approved. Unless, because I work with a lot of accountants that say, hey, this really works for my client, I don't want to change it. I say, I understand that. But if you're doing $100,000 a month or $500,000 a month, whatever that is, keep 10% of that in that operating account, and then this won't ever come into play again.
Yeah.
Little trick. So when you're consulting, please tell them. that's that magic number.
Yeah.
We'll
definitely do that.
So talk. What are some of the things with running a restaurant that you see are a little bit different than certain other ventures or businesses?
There's a couple of things. Like I spoke to earlier, you never know if someone's going to walk through the front door. And you could have, a span of time where your business drops off for a couple of weeks and you're like, where did all the customers go? You have a pretty consistent, repeatable business. And then all of a sudden there's nobody there. And it could be vacation. It could be spring breaks. It could be things that you can kind of plan around. But being in an industry that is not a need, No one needs to go to a restaurant, right? You might need to go to the grocery store to buy food and they can cook at home. Going to a restaurant is a utilization of disposable income, right? And so there are challenges with that, because you could have times where you're in a situation where if you're not breaking even, you're overpaying labor because people didn't come in to eat that day. You've got an inventory that you have to handle in the restaurant business, which is something that people don't often think about. How fresh is your food? How much waste do you have? How much overtime you have to run to appropriately staff, whether or not you're going to be in compliance with all of the, food safety permits and all of the health department requirements. And are you going to deliver food and cater food? And what do you need to have all that? I mean, there are very few businesses that have that many what ifs and
that many variables. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
That's true.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about a few of them, because I feel like you have this so dialed in and a lot of people don't. How do you minimize waste? How do you make sure you're properly staffed? How do you forecast?
Yeah.
Knowing what you just went through.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, as far as food waste is concerned, um, it's actually part of the culture in your restaurant. And I think what most people miss in the restaurant business is, if you don't establish a correct culture in your restaurant, you're going to spend way too much money getting rid of food. You're going to spend way too much money staffing. You're going to spend way too much money trying to keep your inventory correct. It all starts with the people, and are they happy to come to work every day? On a Sunday, we feed 800 people. It's brutal for my staff. There's 25 people feeding 800 people in a course of 6.5 hours. It's a brutal job on a Sunday. And there's a lot of opportunity to have food waste in that space. So you don't make dishes right coming across the line, so the customer doesn't want them and they get thrown out. If you over make, for instance, we're, breakfast business. So if we over make breakfast potatoes or bacon or things like that, those don't keep until the next day, so it is all about dialing in how you're doing your prep, understanding what your pars are, looking at how you can make sure that you're not making things wrong for the guest and doing things the way you want. You've got a server who touches it. You've got a food runner who touches it. You've got an expo. You've got the kitchen chefs who all touch the food. So it's like each one of those people has to be dialed in. So if your culture in your restaurant is such that people just don't have to be detail oriented or dialed in, guess what? It's costing you money every single time they touch a plate.
That is interesting.
Yep.
People don't think about that.
No.
And I feel like any industry that you are competing, because you are competing for discretionary income. And what people don't understand about discretionary income is you're not just competing with other restaurants. You're competing with anything that would be quote unquote discretionary.
Yep.
Right. So do they want to sit down and eat at your restaurant and have an amazing experience? Because that's what's going to tip that scale. Or do they want to get, a new pair of jeans, even though they don't need it?
Yep.
Right. So you're as much as you're selling food, you're really selling an experience.
100%. And again, that's all customer and culture focused. So for instance, in the 7 years that we've been open in my first location, I have staff who's been with us since we opened still. I have 2 or 3 employees that have been there all 7 years. I have 2 or 3 employees that have been with us 4 to 5 years. I also have, the bulk of employees have actually been with us over a year, a lot of them over 2 and 3 years. That creates consistency. I don't spend money training new people. My customers know what to expect when they come back to dine with us. And everyone is happy to come to work. Are they happy every day? No, things happen and people are, stuff isn't perfect every day. But the baseline of it is because they're happy to come to work every day, they take care of the guests who come and make them feel like their family. And that is what, to your point, we're in business to do. Create a customer experience where people say, you know what? I want to see Brianna today, because I don't know what she told me a little bit about what was going on with her a couple of days ago when I was in there having breakfast, and I want to go back and see if all of that turned out for her or whatever, right? Yeah. Those connections in that family environment are what continue to bring people back. And then you just have to make sure that the food is consistent every time they come.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the keys in your mind to keeping your team happy, your employees happy, and everybody on the same page?
The number one biggest thing is that they understand expectations. That's the number one biggest thing. I'm not easy on my staff. I'm not their best friend. I'm not there to make sure that everything goes perfect for them every single day, but they know what I expect. They know that I expect that they take care of the guests. They know that I expect that they connect with the guests as human beings. They know that I expect that they don't have issues with each other. They know that if there are issues, that I'm going to pull them all in and we're going to all talk about it together in the same space. And they also know, number one thing that gets taught to my employees when they first start there is don't mess with the money. They all get taught that too. So the number one thing to create a team culture like that is to make sure that everyone understands the expectations, and then you rule by those expectations fairly. So, a lot of my friends that own restaurants are kind of lenient with their staff, and they don't have dialed in expectations with them. And then they have situations where their staff isn't happy, or they decide to quit, or they get turnover, they get all these other things because people didn't realize what the expectations were. So for me, that's the number one thing when creating a team, is make sure that everyone understands the expectations and can live up to the same values.
I love it.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you've made with the restaurant?
Not managing my money well. It's funny. When we first opened in Ashburn, I had these grandiose, we were just going to have all these people, right, who wanted to come eat. I bought into the brand because the food is good. I had lived in Charlotte and had dined in one of their corporate locations as a regular customer before I moved to where I am. And the food is good. The service environment is good. The service model is great. So I just anticipated we would just have all these people who would want to come and eat, right?
Yep.
I had hoped that the location I selected was the right one to get the visibility, to have the foot traffic, to have the people. I totally screwed that up. It was not the case. We went into a location with low visibility, but potential for the metro coming in there and for some other things being built around it that still to this day have not happened. Okay. And so the very first year, we were well under break even. So we actually lost like $350,000 in the first year, which is a lot of money, and pretty much all of the working capital that we had established for the business itself. So that was probably my biggest learning lesson. Year one was just that, what am I going to do to drive sales? Because I've got to get the sales up so that I get above that, that break even threshold for labor. And so that was a huge learning lesson. And then after being in the restaurant, immersed in it with financial losses for the first couple of years, I wasn't exactly the most fun boss to have either. So 7 days a week, going through all of that, not paying yourself and struggling with all of those things. The other learning lesson that I picked up on finally after about 2 years in was you just have to release the hold, and unfortunately so many restaurant owners don't realize the harder you grip that business, the worse it's going to be. You have to let people go, take the reins, have ownership, and give them the support that they need to do their job well with the staff, and not grip that business too hard. So that was one of the things that I learned as well. I haven't always been this smiley in my life.
Yep. Well, that's a very, very mentally challenging thing, to know that you're not getting paid, you're running a team, and you're losing money each day. That is not an easy thing to come to terms with and show up with a smile on.
No. And I was miserable to be around. I can promise you that. The guests didn't know that. The guests, it's funny because even from the first day we opened the doors, on Saturday and Sunday, we've always had a wait. We've always had a line. People have always wanted to get in there. Like I said, we feed 800 people on a Sunday. Saturdays we feed 500 to 600 people. And so there's always people waiting to get a table at the Famous Toastery. And so for the first few years, people were like, oh my gosh, you're doing so great. Every time I go there on Saturday or Sunday, there's a line out the door. And I'm like, yeah, where are you on Monday through Friday when you can hear your voice echo because there's nobody in there eating.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you because I experienced that same thing that you said is the wrong location.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Retail, I can't stress how important that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually were not able to overcome it. There was a lot of competition in the area. It was over a bridge. Our target market wasn't there, right? So we had to shut it down and focus on a better performing location. Obviously, this isn't has nothing to do with lending. I'm in the middle of no. I could be on the moon and this thing's still going to operate.
Right.
How did you overcome the
You
wrong
know,
location?
I did all kind of things. I sat down to the drawing board and said, how am I going to draw people in? Or how can I deliver food out?
Okay.
And so I focused on direct mail at the time. I felt like nobody was doing it. So people had visibility to it. I focused obviously on social media marketing. I also reached out to like the school systems and local businesses and got involved in the community and, told everyone in the universe that I met that we had catering and that we could get food out to them. And then when we would deliver that, we would take, materials and menus and things like that. So people knew where the food came from. And then that way, if they liked the food, hopefully they would find their way over to the restaurant. And so in our very first year, we did 1.1 million, which was well under what we needed to do. And then now we do about 2.3. So, we're in a much better financial position now than we were then. But it's about how can you be creative? If you can't get butts in seats in your restaurant, how do you get food out to the people, which is what we had to do during COVID. So we had to totally pivot and recreate that during COVID as well. And we did that in different ways then. But I really focused on developing the catering program just so I could get food in someone's mouth, regardless of where they were, and then hope that they would come see us because they enjoyed it.
I love that.
Yeah.
So then you opened another location.
I did. I opened that one in COVID. And that one is a catering and carry out only, and it's about 45 minutes south of here. That one I did because I wanted to see if I could just grow the market share on the catering side of the business. So we have the ability with the vehicles and with the transport things that we have the ability to keep food hot for a few hours. So I can deliver pretty consistent food an hour from me. So I really wanted to grow and spread our geographical footprint. So I opened a satellite location in just a kitchen. So it's like a ghost kitchen for people who have kind of heard about it. And it's just a kitchen space and people can order through DoorDash for that. And then also we deliver catering from there too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of people do not like DoorDash or Uber Eats. Do you want to explain why that is?
A lot of it is just the chain of custody of your food, right? So someone comes, we have certain things happen all the time. Somebody places an order on DoorDash, we make the food, we put the food for the driver to pick up. The driver might not show up for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and that food is dying in the box. It is dying in the box, and then they get it at home, and it's not the same type of food that they would have eaten had they come in to have it fresh in the restaurant. So I actually retailored our menu to things that I knew stood well. Okay. So there are certain things on our DoorDash menu that or on our regular menu that you cannot order through DoorDash, which then also, if people really want it, they come in and eat it. Okay. But that helps us with our ability to be consistent and to have better reviews of food quality is by not having those types of things on the menu.
Smart. I was actually referencing the margin difference.
Oh, well, we could talk about that too.
Yeah.
So when I started third-party delivery, I was actually 6 months post initial COVID. So I guess it was November of 2020. I was adamantly against it for that reason because, DoorDash at that time was 30% is what they
Yeah.
wanted at that time. And so 30%, and then my royalties of 7.5%. Then there was no way I was making any money on any of that.
Correct.
And then I started in November of 2020 with DoorDash only. I don't do any other third party. They are the only ones that I utilize, and the only reason I utilize them is because they have the most consistent drivers where we are. Okay. And when I started the relationship with DoorDash, I went back to the franchise and said, what are you guys going to do buying power wise to get our percentages down? Yep. Nobody was really doing that because DoorDash was really starting to grow, so people were not able to negotiate rates at that point. But the franchise was eventually able to do that, which helped out. And then I increased the pricing. So if you want to order from DoorDash, great. You could come eat at the restaurant for about 15% cheaper than you can order it on DoorDash. It's up to you. Do you want to put clothes on, get out of your car and drive? Or do you want to spend 15% extra and have it in the comfort of your own home in your pajamas? That's your decision. It's a convenience to you, so it shouldn't cost me any more to do business with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight that for everyone that is so addicted to like Uber Eats or DoorDash. You're actually taking money out of your favorite establishment's pockets.
Well, if your favorite establishment does not make adjustments in pricing, and they are well within their legal right to make adjustments in pricing because of that convenience. There is more expense, obviously, with packaging and all the things that go along with food being delivered, but hopefully your establishments by now are pricing that stuff accordingly.
You would be shocked because I see it all. I see it all on my seat.
So well, true. Yeah.
You would be shocked. So I think that you dropped so much here just on the food service and restaurant and hospitality. Let's get into the cash flow management and consulting.
Yeah.
Because I do truly believe that every single entrepreneur, before they even open the door, should go through some level of training or study on cash flow. Because cash flow is everything.
Yep.
Walk us through this.
So it's interesting. I had in my prior to being an entrepreneur life, I managed a P&L, a $25 million P&L, and I thought I knew cash flow well, right? And then I fell on my face, right, in the first 2-3 years that I was owning my own business. So to your point, you need some good visibility and training on how cash flow works, how to actually read financial reports, how they actually impact it. Why does your profit on your profit and loss statement not match the amount of cash you have in the bank at the end of the day? Like these are basic tools and things that people should learn before they go into business for themselves. A lot of the clients that I work with, I'm getting late in the game. They've already messed up their cash flow. They've already are at the point where another payroll in another 2 weeks, they can't save their business anymore. I have several clients that are in that space. And I think probably the biggest thing that I would share being in the type of work I do is don't be ashamed. Like I lost $350,000 in my first year in business. And you know what? I told nobody because I was ashamed. But guess what? I could have had somebody help me figure that out so that by the time I got to COVID, I wasn't broke, And so understanding that it's okay to screw that up and understanding that you can come back from those decisions and they're not business ending and they're not career ending and life ending, and just be honest and upfront and say, okay, this is where I'm at,
I love that.
Yeah. It's bottom line is, to your point, if it's something you never learned, were never taught, never worked through, you're not going to understand it. And most business owners go into business because they want to be the doer of whatever business they're opening, not because they want to manage the finances.
Correct.
And
if you are looking at your bank account to make decisions, just simple rule of thumb, usually what I ask people, when you make a financial decision regarding your business, are you looking at your bank statement? If the answer is yes, you are not managing your cash flow properly. Mm-hmm. A couple of things that I tell people, every single business needs a line of credit. Doesn't mean you need to use it, but you need it. People don't understand why. You need it for emergencies. opportunities and anything that's short term. Because what they do, putting together a business is like building a house. You can't use one tool, right? You need a suite of tools, and you need to know when to pull each lever.
Yep.
Because if you can have the cheapest line of credit in the world, but if you use it to buy equipment, you're doing it wrong, right?
Yep.
And the same thing, if you use a line of credit to consolidate debt, you're doing it wrong.
Yep.
So you need that type of specialized advice. There's a financial tool for everything that you're trying to do.
Yep.
Okay. The biggest one I get, and I always have to correct, is any business that is B2B that wants a line of credit. The first thing I ask them is, what are your terms? They say net 15, net 30. I said, you do not need a line of credit first. You need to set up invoice factoring.
Yep.
And then you can open up your line of credit. And people do not understand the difference because no one teaches us this stuff in school. And a lot of times entrepreneurs make mistakes because they just think one size fits all, and it doesn't solve the actual challenge or the root cause of it.
Yep.
So
Very
I love
true.
this. This is to me, this is probably my favorite spotlight.
Yeah, it's funny because, and I know you see this too. People often ask, they're like, "Well, when should I take out debt?" And it's like, well, you should take out debt when it's going to earn you money. Like, don't take out debt for it to just cost you money. I talk to a lot of people who are like, to your point about, especially about lines of credit. They're like, "Oh, but I need a line of credit to cover payroll," and I'm like, "No, you don't need a line of credit to cover payroll. If you need a line of credit to cover payroll, your AR is out of control."
Yeah.
Or you're not pricing your product properly, or you have too many people working on your payroll.
Yes.
It literally is that easy, bottom line. So definitely one of the biggest takeaways people need to get from today is if you feel like you need to take out debt, you should only be taking it out to generate more revenue. That's it. That should be the only reason.
As someone that has made a career and a living and built a decent business on this, I can back that up 1,000%.
Yeah.
There's a thing called good debt and a thing called bad debt. And bottom line, if you are taking out money, there's two basic principles. One, the cash that money is going towards, whatever you're using that for, has to bring in more than what that payment is. Bottom line. The next big metric, okay, and this isn't get the best deal, this is just bottom line, should I do it or not? Are you earning more money by using that debt to buy whatever you need than that debt is costing you?
Yep.
That's all this is. Money is a tool. People don't look at it like that. They think money is life. Money is just a tool, and if you use the tool wisely, you win the game.
Yeah.
If you use it poorly, you lose the game.
Yep.
That's all it is.
Well, I'll tell you, as somebody who made all the wrong moves and mistakes and choices early on and has learned it all the hard way, that'll be me over here.
I love this conversation too because you're very open about some of those mistakes, and everybody likes to flash, the success story.
Oh yeah.
And it's not about the success story.
No.
Because you're not going to teach people about that. Anyone can sign that lease for the Lambo. Anybody.
Yep. You're 100% right. And it's it's funny because I often work with clients who, again, they get to that point and then they feel like shame because they know that the choices that they made did not lend themselves well. Again, it's about education. Yes. It's 100% about education. So don't be ashamed of feeling like you're not the guy with the lease for your Lambo, right? Because chances are that guy probably can't afford the dang thing either. And he's got a line of credit to make his payroll so that he can have the lease for the Which is why I still drive a beater because I don't even care.
It's funny you say that. I just this year ordered my first nice car. I've always had okay cars.
Yeah.
I just got a TRX. I spent money on a boat, but I do this after investing. So Ed always talks about rewarding yourself. I actually reward myself with investments, like another piece of like another real estate, investment or something. The boat is definitely not an investment. The boat is absolutely
A toy.
a money pit. It's a money pit.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the important stuff that we should be being taught in school. And to be honest with you, we're not. And you usually have to learn by making every mistake in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully you don't make the same mistake twice, although I've been guilty of that, you know. So who is your ideal client on the consulting side, the cash flow management side?
So my ideal client is just one that is open-minded and ready to work. I have clients, like I said, who come to me and they're literally like it's a week and a half before they got to shut their doors. I've got clients who come to me with a ton of money in the bank and they're not earning any interest on it. I've got one client that does has a very high 10-figure revenue, and the amount of interest that they earned on that revenue transacting back and forth in a year was less than $100.
Yeah.
Right. And you sit down and have the conversations with people and you say, okay, if nothing else, you held enough of that money to earn some really decent interest. It's not costing you anything to earn interest. Just put some of the money away so that you can earn some interest off of it so that it's working for you while you're transacting it back and forth. But that particular client is not as open-minded as some of the ones that I have that have made the mistakes and are like, whatever you tell me to do, I'm gonna have to close in 2 weeks. I'll do it,
Yeah.
and then they learn and they're open-minded and they're ready to work. So my ideal client is somebody who's open-minded, ready to work. If you got a problem, we'll fix it together. We will sit down and have the hard conversations. I had a conversation with a client this week who was in that situation. I said, look, this is a hard conversation. I'm going to give you two different options. One of them is bankruptcy and the other one is the option you're going to want to do. So it sucks too, but go do it,
Yeah.
So that's my ideal client. I don't care how much money you have or don't have, just be ready to do the work.
I love it.
Yeah.
Take us through your process, like typical onboarding process. What are you digging into in that first meeting?
It's what I like to do before the first time that I sit down to onboard somebody is I like to look at their financials and sit down and say, okay, can I see how well they've priced their product? Can I see how their cash has been moving for the last 18 months? Can I get an understanding of where their money is spent? And what I find oftentimes when I'm onboarding a client is their bookkeeping is not where it needs to be. They don't have a really good detailed P&L to help them make business decisions on whether they should be hiring people, firing people, changing their product pricing, understanding where their expense money is going, all of those things. So in a lot of cases, I do end up offering bookkeeping services to clients as well because their bookkeeping isn't clean enough that they could even make a decision on their own or understand what they're doing. And so we have the hard conversations from kind of minute one. And I'm not for the faint of heart at all.
Yeah, but you probably get better results because you're not.
Maybe so. I haven't had any clients leave me yet in the last 2 years. All the ones I've started. I have a very small client book because most of it's by word of mouth, and so it's people that get referred to me. But I haven't had anybody leave me in the last 2 years, and so I guess if nothing else, I guess that speaks for itself right now. Yeah. I don't know, but.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So we are well over, but I'm enjoying this. So I don't know what your timeline is.
I'm open.
You're open? Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Because I think this is very, very important for entrepreneurs. And that's why we do this.
Yeah.
If you were to advise somebody that is, let's say, first 6 months of business, what are some of the things that you're going to tell them they need to do when you set up?
Accurate books and a very detailed profit and loss statement is number one. Do you understand how much money is coming into your business? If you're a business that is applicable to sales tax, do you understand how that breaks out? Do you understand how that moves in your bank accounts? Do you understand what your obligations with that money are? On the payroll side of things, do you understand what it actually looks like to pay someone, what their expenses are, what your payroll taxes look like? All the little nuances that people forget, when they're, a lot of people, and I've had clients that price their products and services and forget all of those details. And like, why am I not making money? I should be making profit on this. I'm like, well, you forgot you have to pay payroll taxes.
Yep.
And you forgot that 6% of what came in for that sale was actually state sales tax that you have to send out, once a month. And you forgot that this costs you this, and your rent has triple net on it, and all of the details, right? So that's usually one of the things that I want to do with all of them first, to say, okay, let's sit down with your profit and loss statement and make sure it makes sense, and make sure that your pricing is correct, because that impacts everything in your business.
Absolutely. That's the driver.
Yep.
That's the driver.
Yep.
For sure. The only thing I would add to that is build business credit right away.
Yeah, that too.
Way too many people don't do that, don't know how it can work to their advantage. And, they'll go 3, 4, 5. I've seen businesses, 10 years in business, 8-figure business. Well, not really, not a 7-figure business with no business credit, because they just never actually took the time to set it up, which is mind-blowing.
Yeah, especially because without the ability to access credit, you can't go through exponential growth.
No.
You have to be able to have access to credit in order to grow exponentially. You can grow a little bit here and there, but you're eventually going to get to the point where you've tapped yourself out, and you really need some kind of injection to get there. So unless you've saved enough money on your own to do that injection, but in most cases, that's not going to be true, because most cases, entrepreneurs who have only been in business 2, 3, 4 years, they're not saving their money.
No.
They're putting every penny back into the business. Some of them aren't even paying themselves. They're operating from, their expected revenue week to week.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you do a review with clients? So I remember, were you at the summit for Mr. Wonderful?
No.
Okay. So Mr. Wonderful came. He changed my opinion at that summit of him, but the things he's done recently have changed it back to different opinions.
Okay.
Just based on some of the things he promotes and who he backs.
Okay.
But my big takeaway on that was how he operates so many different businesses, and what he does every month. He goes and reviews all the P&Ls on every business. Spends an hour on each business, asks questions. So it's just a one-on-one with that operator. And I can tell you, I know that most entrepreneurs do not actually go through that exercise.
I do that actually once a month with my monthly contract clients. That's part of what we do. And if we also do their bookkeeping, then once their bookkeeping is completed for that month, I set up a one-on-one call with them, and we go through their financial reporting and talk about the ebbs and flows. If I see anything that's kind of changed in sales, if I see things that have changed in any of their expense categories, we sit down and have a conversation. And then we also talk about every month, once a month, what are your goals? Because those change on a monthly basis too. So what are your goals? Do you want to open another location in 6 months? Okay. Well, if that's what you want to do, then you need to be thinking about what you need to do on this end of things in order to get there 6 months from now. So that is one of the things that I do offer as a part of the package with my clients. Yeah.
What systems do you find it's easiest for them to implement? So when I say systems, is it QuickBooks? Is it NetSuite? Are there any systems that you would say, hey, if you're starting off, you should look into?
I think it depends on the person. I'm not a proponent of wearing every single hat, but I am a proponent of learning everything that goes along with every single hat. So if you're an entrepreneur that is just starting out and your anticipated business size in the beginning is, 6 or 7, low 7 figures, QuickBooks is the easiest thing, in all honesty. It's the easiest thing to get to. It's the most economical. It costs you $15 a month. You can have somebody like me set it up for you to get everything accurate, and you can access it yourself, and so can they.
Yep.
And so it is very user friendly and easy to figure out. And so, as much as Intuit drives me crazy in so many ways, it is really the best platform and super user friendly and it's easy to scale to a certain point as well. Unless you're super complicated with inventories and inventory control and management and things like that, QuickBooks is just the easiest thing to use. Yeah.
So what is the best way to get in contact with you? Where can people find you if they want to work with you on the cash flow side, or someone needs, just some advice in some direction? Because I feel like I know when I speak to an operator, right? Like, because you've been through the same war stories.
Yep.
You've done it all. So where can someone find you or reach out or work with
The best place to get me is on Instagram, and my handle is Ms. Angela Goodman, so MS Angela Goodman. And that's really the best place to find me. I obviously have a website for the business, which is www.valkyrieventuresgroup.com. And those two routes make it super easy to get a hold of me, and I'm responsive.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. This was
thanks for having me. I was really excited to be here.
All right. Well, hey, I'm telling you, get in contact with Angela. I can tell you, most of you guys don't handle your books the right way. I love you all, but you don't. So, and it's been a game changer for me too, right? Because I had a partner that did not do that with my past venture, and it cost me multiple six figures. And I made the switch, went on my own, I rebranded, and that was one of the first things I put in place. And let me tell you something, I sleep much better. So get in touch with Angela. Angela, thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next one.